It's an absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Vishal Rao. We know him for nearly 2 decades as the leading surgeon here in Bangalore. One other thing, what he is known across the world is for his innovations. He has multiple patents to his name. He has beyond 18 patents to his name and multiple products which is in the market. One thing which is very famous across the globe is his Om voice prosthesis. Many of you might have heard about it. Om voice prosthesis is fondly and famously known as $1 prosthesis, which is given voice to multiple cancer patients. So he is not just a leader with a surgical innovation, but also a man with a lot of heart. We worked very closely during COVID. His involvement and contributions in bringing about state-of-the-art technologies to bring precise genomic sequencing technologies during COVID was impeccable. So he is actively a part of many government advisory panels, advising government on multiple issues which is of relevance with respect to public health. So we are honored to welcome you here, sir. Welcome to Dr. Vishal Rao.
Thank you, Bhaskar.
Can you take us through a journey of being a doctor, being a scientist, being an innovator? These are multiple things you're doing together. What is that which ignited your interest to do all these things?
I think at the foundation of it is science. And I believe science itself is incomplete if it is only left to serve only a few of us and if it's only left to the controls of GDP. So for me, the interest from childhood and from thing was science. I drifted towards astrophysics and I drifted towards mathematics in the initial years. But I think fortunately or unfortunately, my biology marks came up better. So I was, during our time, my parents said, you should take up your path in biology, and there I was with medicine. So from medicine till now oncology and I think further research and after that innovation, all circled me back to one single question, that is, I've put my all focus on cancer. In various ways, all the roles that you attribute to the work I'm doing today focuses around one single word, cancer. A little bit of, if you take the diameter a little bit and expand it, it would say non-communicable diseases a little more. COVID brought me in to work on COVID because the NCDs were the most affected. So we actually embraced, and I remember our meeting of the NCD summit of the UN was in March 12, 2020. Which was being headed by Mr. Michael Bloomberg, the UN ambassador. And just 1 week before the meeting we got an email saying that there's nothing to worry, our meeting is on. And days before, the health minister of UK gets infected and the meeting gets cancelled. That was the beginning of the NCD story for me. And how NCD experts actually came working with communicable disease experts, which we thought were poles apart. Both were not connected, but got so closely connected by one virus. So all through this journey, it has been about science and trying to find answers to questions of patients who came in front of me. So I classically represent a case study on bedside to bench medicine, a reverse way of innovation, wherein you found the problems in the clinic, you took it back to the lab, collaborated with people. I have Professor Vijay Chandru here, who's been again a great mentor, guide, friend. I think the whole ecosystem of science was developed with this particular interest. So I think all these roles oftentimes you get attributed to one particular domain. I think the core, at the center of it and the heart of it is the question of science.
You mentioned at the center of it is the patient, and with the patient in the center working around that. And the most interesting thing what I found out is your interest in astrophysics. We have not seen anything yet in the astrophysics arena. Probably we'll be looking at something in the future, I guess. So understanding all of this and looking at where all you are. So you are omnipresent. You're there in government meetings, you're there in private meetings, you're there in innovators forums. So that's a difficult question if we look at most of us. We struggle to manage time, but you have been seen to have somehow figured this out pretty well. How do you manage time?
Yeah, so a long back, my mentor, one of my gurus, had told me a very beautiful thing. He said, if you want to manage time well, give it to a busy person. It's only a busy person who gets time. A person who is not busy will not have time. And I believe time management comes with that prioritization also. So today I feel, you want to get a work done, give it to a busy man. I mean, Bhaskar is one example here. He's also busy, and I've worked with you during the COVID time. I think you're the busiest there, and you still gave all of us time.
Probably.
I mean, So I think you also reflect one part of the same question, that you manage time well, correct? And I believe a time management comes with collaboration, comes with not doing everything alone, and that's the way we've been able to manage time, because as a team, as you grow, you're able to deliver better and expand better. So that's my mantra of time management, that I feel that I'm able to give it because I have teams that are better than me, and that's helped me a lot in many ways.
So when we want to bring something out in the market, one of the commonest thing is we see a lot of work happening in silos. So there are multiple organizations working to solve the same problem, and we struggle to collaborate. Another successful area where at least it seems like you've figured out how to collaborate and bring together people from multiple sectors. How have you been able to do this and bring about collaboration in sectors which are so diverse?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I realized many years down the line was collaboration itself. We somehow fix ourselves to domain. We always say that collaboration is a domain-specific area. There are two aspects to collaboration. One aspect is collaboration between institutions which are domain-specific, and the other aspect is cross-domains. So there are two elements to it. Now, I think the classic element of the beginning of the story begins with COVID. During COVID, we had people collaborate because there was no one single authority. So there was a bioinformatician who was talking to a clinician, who was talking to an infectious disease specialist, who was talking to a pulmonologist, who was talking to an ICU expert, and yet there was no expert. And I think that was a classic story that I saw, unwinding of collaborations. And COVID was the classic story that told us that principles of collaboration need not be bound. We had people from the area of basic sciences giving advices to the virologist who did not know much about what's happening with the clinical part, who did not know much about what's happening with the aspect of some policy part. And this brought together a very beautiful ecosystem. And I think it's a watershed line for me in history. Yes. So I often say AD and BC. AD is after disease, BC is before COVID. So it's a big watershed line for collaboration and the mantra of collaboration. But if I take it one step behind and tell you, I think there was another very interesting interaction of mine in one of the sessions which was conducted by the Harvard Business School with some other experts, in which I had the interaction with the Rolls-Royce CEO. And while we were talking, and there was one very interesting discussion that we were having, and after my presentation, he was talking about various ideas. And during this discussion, what came out was that in the 19th century, knowledge was power. In the 20th and 21st century, ignorance will be power. Now, if you want to use your power of ignorance, you need to go to a non-domain fellow. So I had people come to me talk about turbines. Now, I have no clue of turbines, correct? So they said, that's why we want to win. Because the problem with these people is who know too much about turbines will do the same turbine. I just know it rotates in one way. That's all I know about it. So the Rolls-Royce team was explaining to me about how when they want to search for a new idea, they go back to children. They actually go back to children to ask what's the kind of a design that you would want of a car. And I was quite amazed by hearing that, because they said, if you go back to an engineer, he'll draw the same car with the same four wheels and the same body with a slight modification, because knowledge has restricted your thinking. Unfortunately, this has been the biggest problem with the today's era, that knowledge has restricted your thinking because you're told not to go out of your domain, and domain restricts your expertise. I think the only way to collaborate is collaborate with absolutely ridiculous collaborations. That's the power of a collaboration. If as ridiculous as it is, the more powerful is the collaboration. It should make you think. Like I had to collaborate with a toy maker who solved my problem of a voice prosthesis insertion. That's the limit of ridiculousness I went into. And everybody said, what can a toy maker do? Actually, the toy maker simplifies things. He makes it for kids. I had a toy maker with science who was able to do it. So for me, this is the most unlikely collaboration that I could do that can come up with something disruptive. And I want to give that as a strong message to the current innovators. You want to disrupt it, go outside your domain. Just go outside your domain. Just go as random as possible. Think about it. Do not restrict yourself to your domain.
When we say innovation and when we are working on something new, something like you mentioned, disruptive, it comes with a lot of risk. We need to have a lot of risk-taking appetite to jump into that. We'd like to hear from you and understand with an instance or an example where you took that significant risk, and what are those key learnings, like 3-4 learnings, what you could pick up from them?
So I'll take it back to a recent interview I gave to WIPO, WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization. Sometime back, that put me as the personality of the month. And the lady who interviewed me, Suzanne, while she was talking to me, she asked me, she said, Dr. Rao, can you tell me how has your journey been as an entrepreneur? So I told her, I said, as complex as the spelling, so is the journey. I still don't get the spelling right. I'm not a perfect entrepreneur. And if you ask me, every single point of it is a hurdle. There was no point where there's no hurdle. And in entrepreneurship, that's the rule of the game. So if you ask me, 2013, when I started the first initiative step of taking the voice box and saying that I wanted to invent a voice box. And you can imagine 2013 was not the time when you had so much of trust and support for innovation. And everybody ridiculed me. They said, this is stupid. This is the most craziest idea. So until you think that somebody believes that it's completely ridiculous means that it's worth it. So please trust in that if you think it is correct and if somebody says this is ridiculous, I think you're in the right direction. That's a starting point. So I pursued it, and today I'm just trying to tell you that's a 10-year period. Now, during that period of innovations, every single part was a hurdle. So which means I started with saying that I needed to, the mantra number 1 for me was, don't innovate for markets. Innovate for an individual. Because individual has a soul to it, and that can be expanded to masses, and masses can become markets. However, if you look at the current, some of the advices that you're given is, there's a market in AI for like 2 billion. Let's work on AI. Yeah. That's not the solution. Where is the problem lie? And that's the depth of the question that you need to answer. And for me, those questions took years. It was not easy to get a good question. And trust me, I don't know how many of us in this audience wake up with a brilliant idea to Google it up and say that 200 people have already done it. And you felt you've lost your Nobel Prize. Correct? We all wake up with that crazy, brilliant idea and say, oh wow, this is unique. And you realize that already so many have already completed it. So every aspect of this innovation for me and this invention was about questioning and challenging myself and at every step. Until when I completed the voice box and then went back. And that's when Government of India, and the first support I got from BIRAC was, they told me, don't invent a product, invent an ecosystem. I said, this is a bigger hurdle now. Inventing a device is okay, inventing an ecosystem is a complex one. And at that time, nobody had the mastery on plastic silicon. And my partner Shashank, who was my co-inventor in plastic, was a master at it. So he told me, he said, this is a very complex job, it's not going to be easy. But Government of India stood with us, and we actually today have a complete clean room with factory, which I think hardly 3 people in the country have. And the other 2 are top companies. And we are the only ones collaborating with startups to try and see how to create from POC to scale up kind of ideas. In healthcare, in medtech, in this area, because our mastery in plastic and silicon took us to another journey. 2 honorable prime ministers sometime back taking the entire idea of our voice prosthesis to Davos in the World Economic Forum and displaying it there. And among the 4 healthcare innovations, this was one among them. And this has now got a US patent. So in those 10 years, what I saw was all those people slowly backed off. All those impossible people who told me it's useless, it's a waste. Today there are only 3 patents in the world, 1 from US, 1 from Europe, 1 from India. So if you ask me, it was all full of hurdles. Everybody told me it's impossible. Everybody told me it's useless. In fact, I didn't have money to fight the court case in the US when people were fighting against it. I fought it alone. I said, I'll fight it because I think I'm reasonably okay to fight it with low budget. India's adversity gives you a lot of opportunities. So I won the case. I got my patents. And I think that's what I think is the key mantra here, that for me, adversity is the rule. Do not get scared of adversity, because without it, you don't have any flavor to your success. And I think that's the key learning from most of the steps that I went through, that if you can achieve this, converting that adversity into an opportunity is going to take you into the next game, the next level of the game.
Especially when we look at medical or healthcare, and how was your journey as an entrepreneur, as an innovator in the medical device and health tech space with respect to government policies and government support? BIRAC, again, is a quasi-government which supports innovators, but when it comes to getting approvals, making it as a product live in the market, it's still not been an easy task for many of our colleagues in the medical.
You can use any of us, not many of us. I think
probably
everyone from senior to junior here knows that policy is not something that comes as a platter on the cake, or working on it. But I can tell you from a little bit of my experience with what we did with the voice. We had invented the voice box, and my idea was that speech is a right, not a privilege. And I wanted to make a watchman speak, a security guard speak, who came to me and said, after you did your surgery, I lost my voice, I lost my job. Now, this was in my mind, that he's lost his job, he's lost his voice. So I solved the first part of it. I gave him his voice back by inventing a voice machine. Sure, I solved one part of the problem. But then there were two other parts of the problem to it. How do I ensure that people don't lose their voice box regularly? Which is where I started working more stringently on tobacco control, because 99% of them are smokers. One part of the problem, which is where policy had to take a strong turn. The second part was, how do I get his job back? So now I went back again to Government of India, and they said this is where actually, through BIRAC's initiative and DST's support, we were actually able to present a case to say that the ecosystem needs to be changed. And that's when the Ministry of Social Justice came forward and they amended the Rights for Persons with Disabilities Act of 2016 to actually include throat cancer into one of the aspects so that they are recognized as a handicap. And what happened after that? Today I have a patient who has lost his job and has now a job. Who has lost his voice, who lost his job, now has got a job back. I have brought him back to GDP. That for me is working comprehensively on a policy. And for me, that's a very arduous journey. So when my first patient, after 6 years of the policy, came with the card and said, sir, I got my job back, I took a photo with him, with the card, and I said to my colleagues, I know it's an arduous journey. It's not that something's going to come on a platter, because there is a system in place. And every time systems in place, government change, bureaucrats change, systems change, sub-bureaucracy changes, policy, vision changes. You have to navigate through it. The question is, how persistent are you? And stick to it. Just don't lose your focus. My point is, if you think that your idea is honest and if it's going to benefit people, believe me, the system will change around. There is no question. Ministers may change, bureaucracy may change, governments may change. The larger principle will remain, because you will be the person who owns it, and the government will co-own it with you. And that's the key fulcrum with which everybody should focus on.
That's inspiring and a lot of hope for sure. So for sure speaks about your work and experience working across sectors and with the government. So speaking of government, we have this SDG goal for 2030 to have universal health coverage. Your hope and vision, and what are your thoughts about how can India achieve this, and which is the direction we should move further?
I think if you look at the sustainable development, the first primary principle of it is health itself, correct? I often tell that in a myopic sense, health departments deal with only disease. What healthcare we are talking about today is only disease care. It's not healthcare. We have mistakenly driven the entire energy, and you are a witness to it, I'm a witness to it. We do disease care, we do not healthcare at all. So our job is not wellness or prevention, our job is only delivery of healthcare to a sick person. And that myopic perspective has to be broadened, and that is what the SDG goals are about. They are not going to be about just driving healthcare delivery. And oftentimes when I see countries and states who have driven public health policies, I've seen the draft of the policies all about how to deliver healthcare cost effectively, which has nothing to do with actually the aspect of, so I think if I have to put it in a nutshell, it's very, very crucial that we focus on prevention and cover the aspect of cure and treatment. But unless you address what you call the social determinants of health, the social determinants of health, the SDH, will help you with SDGs. That's the key element. So the social determinants of health are very crucial in order to impact that, and that is where you will need to have HIAP, health in all policy approach. Now, for example, to tell you, municipality has nothing to do with health. How is it possible that municipality has nothing to do with health? You are the one driving it at one point in time. Municipality has an integral role in health. Can you say that water surveillance has nothing to do with health? Can you say rural development has nothing to do with health? Can you say energy has nothing to do with health? Can you say environment has nothing to do with health? So which means I have to have health department which has got one representative in each department. Not a health department that has got one single thing, which is the weakest department, because the most powerful department seems to be the finance department and the home department, which is why most chief ministers would try to take that portfolio and say health anybody else can take, because health is not a revenue department generating. Health is a lot of burden. It's got a lot of sickness. But very few chief ministers would say, I would want to take a health minister's portfolio. Correct? So I think the drift has to be changed towards driving towards health and not disease, and changing the entire perspective from illness to wellness.
Absolutely. I think there is no two thoughts about this at all. All this while we as doctors, we have been treating patients, rather it should be towards not having any more patients. We should ensure the population does not acquire the disease so that we get to treat to them. So ensure prevention as the primary strategy.
And Bhaskar, if I have to relate it to myself, and I'm saying forget about giving yarn to the rest of the world. In my department in head and neck cancer, my wish should be that my department should shut down someday, sooner or later. SDG should be that. Now, how do I implement it to that? Forget about the rest of the world. What am I doing? It starts with me, correct? What am I doing for SDG? I am working towards tobacco control. I am working towards a larger public health policy for cancer prevention, early detection that ensures that there is tobacco reduction. And what the Jody Wilkinfield Award was given was that over 5 years span, there was a 7% reduction of tobacco consumption in Karnataka. Now, that's my contribution to the actual work with the team that made a difference to say that I was able to give and gift health to the state, not disease. I think each one healthcare worker or each one person in the healthcare field will need to take this onus on himself to say, what do I have to do for SDG? Rather than say, it is government job. Correct. And that I think is the hallmark of participatory democracy, where I say that I participate in my change.
One of the biggest challenges we have as a healthcare sector in India is not having a strong referral system to even get into the thought or moving towards universal health coverage. We need to ensure accessibility to all. Today, unfortunately, majority of tertiary care, secondary care is concentrated in the urban areas. Rural areas still has very limited accessibility to even the primary care. Even if they have the levels of care which is accessible is very varied and diverse, they're not able to get to that level of care. How do we build a strong system which has a strong referral system and ensures accessibility to every single person in the community?
Whenever I've thought of this, and I have to give you an example of when I wanted to study some of these models and implementation, I went to the farthest Gram Panchayat. In the Gram Panchayat, roughly there are about 10 to, if you study the Balwant Rai committee report on how villages were formed in India and Gram Panchayats were structured as per regulatory norms, each Gram Panchayat will have between 6 to 10 villages. I went to the farthest village after which there is nothing and sat there. I'm just trying to talk pragmatic so that we understand rather than talk a theoretic perspective. In that village, how do you deliver healthcare? Now, when I went into that village in the Gram Panchayat and I went and looked at what was available there were two interesting things that I found which were available there. Coke was available there and telephone, mobile phone, smartphone was available there. Healthcare was not available there. So I thought to myself, if these two are available, can we use this mechanism and understand how do we actually reach the healthcare goal? If these two can be given there, a smartphone can be given there, is it not possible for us to take through that smartphone health to be delivered to that person? I think this is reality for me. That in that last village wherein there is going to be, which is 10 kilometers away from the closest police station if the crime occurs. Right. I'm just talking about a Kalyan Karnataka village, which is the less developed district and the farthest village in that Gram Panchayat. Worst scenario, where still there is a smartphone. That means that smartphone is able to reach over there. A Coca-Cola or a Pepsi is able to reach there. What is the mechanism they must have used? They are ultra smart.
Yes.
If these two have been able to reach there, if an Airtel and a Jio have been able to reach there, and network has been able to reach there, I think our network should reach there. It's about commitment. I fail to say that no, we can't reach. It's that we've not made one conviction to say we are going to reach there tomorrow morning. I think the day we decide that tomorrow morning we'll reach there. And the one pathway to that is to bring that person and give him that information through that aid of that particular shop or that particular phone and tell him information. I know there is an information overload, but at the same time there is valuable information, credible information which government gives. If that can be used as a fulcrum, you can bring that fellow very early into the healthcare system before things go wrong.
Interesting. So I think COVID was one good example where many of these bridges were built, rather, which would have taken decades to be built, rather happened in 1.5 to 2 years. Thankfully, technology, adaptation, behavior, everything got changed during COVID. Probably we should start utilizing what we learned during COVID to implement many more things in the future. So looking forward, we have seen multiple technologies, multiple sectors changing over time, and multiple innovations which are made. What is that which really excites you when you look at future? And if you want to pinpoint and say this is one area which is the frontier technology for the next decade to look forward in healthcare, what is that one?
I think I'll broadly start with the philosophy. And I feel if you look at, let's say, starting from COVID, bench to bedside medicine for any innovator in healthcare, bench to bedside, takes an average 17 years. This is what is known. 17 years is what it takes. So you can look at any reference, study it. So I keep telling people who are innovators, saying, look, healthcare is about patients, and I keep telling investors also, look, this is not like real estate. Tomorrow morning, 10x, 20x, please don't expect in this. This is a slow investment. Because a lot of people, investors, at least the Indian ecosystem of investors is very poorly understood, because a person who doesn't understand science, who sits only with finance, is a very dangerous person and will think about 100x over 2 days, 3 days kind of an imagination sometimes, wild sometimes. So I tell them bench to bedside takes 17 years, roughly. If you look at studies that have been systematically published from Lancet, Elsevier, to take the most reputed ones. Why does it take so? Because there is preclinical, clinical, animal guidelines, phase 3, then after that, regulate. It's a long pathway, arduous pathway. What happened during COVID was there was a research hyperloop that was created, research to practice hyperloop. For the first time, the world said that the humans' trials are over, the chimpanzees are waiting. This is a complete reverse loop that happened, correct? It was a fast track of everything that happened, because they realized they had to actually bring, time was not on their side. So they had to deliver. Now, using this cue, the world is now different at this juncture. So where I look at future is, US FDA is changing, global FDAs are changing, and they are trying to understand why should we wait for example for another 17 years for a relevant patient who's ready right now for a rare disease, for example. Right. Who should say, no, we can't give you approval because it's going to go through that 17-year process. It was historically the first time that the drug controller of any country signed the first order of preclinical and the last order of the final approval in one single drug controller. Typically, it takes 4 drug controllers to sign it. This is the first time that one drug controller signed both. Said preclinical also I am only clearing, final also I am only clearing. So now we cannot let this go. And I feel for the future, my thing is for all of us sitting here, please be one thing. If you are a healthcare advocate, remember one thing. All this while every government of every country was talking about infrastructure and defense. Please tell them to bring health on the table. And that is your job, not my job, not his job alone. Together, we all have to say infra, health and defense should come together. Take it as biodefense. But few grams of this virus stopped the world. Whom did you call at that time? Us. We all came together. Don't forget us. And that's what I think I remember when we had the vision group meeting with Dr. Chandru and others. We reminded the entire hall. And I think there was a very nice meeting there. We had the biggest representation from IT. We had a big representation from electronics. We had a big representation from other groups. And BT was a small table. And that was the actual table that saved the world. That was the actual table that saved the country. That was the actual table that brought Bangalore on the feet. The healthcare group. That was the smallest table. But often gets neglected. And I think it's our onus for the future and our responsibility for the future that each one of us says that to the government. That look, don't forget us. It's around the corner. And your team at ARTPARK, I again congratulate you for all the work you are doing for pandemic preparedness, dengue and all of the things. Should be highlighted as a part of this responsibility, which should never take away the highlight from the government to say health should be in par with defense and with infra. There is no point in having a great defense and infra without a great health.
Totally agree to your thought. I think probably at least by now the government should have realized how important putting in both interest and money into healthcare, which has been neglected for many years, but hopefully, again, looking into the future, hopefully there is some interest and money put into healthcare. Like you rightly mentioned, biotechnology, we are at least thankful to the government that they have been supporting us with multiple initiatives. Like you rightly mentioned, pandemic preparedness. What we are trying to do here is also ensure that the learnings what we got and built during COVID is not lost. So ensure the teams are kept in place, ensure the learnings are kept in place so that if in case it is required for anything else, not just in humans, but in livestock or the broader umbrella of One Health, we should be ready to pitch in and start working on day one. We should not be scrambling and caught in the wrong foot again. So that's what we are looking at. So keeping all this aside, Dr. Rao, one thing as entrepreneurs, one thing as innovators, which guides us, which nudges us in the right direction is mentorship. So you have been a mentor. You have mentored multiple people, including me, in multiple times. So who was your mentor who guided you in the right direction? Who has inspired you? And what would be that one real mentorship thought or nudge which changed your life?
I'll tell you, mentors are like signboards in your life. When you're going through a journey, they say that it's equally important to have a journey, it's important to have a destination, it's also important to have a company. The company is the mentor. And I think a mentor comes in different phases. At every phase, you have a different mentor, So I think broadly, many mentors came in my life, and I would want to acknowledge many of them. I think because every phase for the problem that I had was a different mentor who came and helped me. That phase when I had no belief in my idea was a mentor who came and told me, believe in this idea and go ahead. To at a time when I was failing and I had no funding, there was a mentor who came and supported it. To I think every phase you get a new mentor. So I would acknowledge several hundreds of them who came as mentors. But the greatest and the most beautiful thing that I learned during this phase of mentorship, which one of the mentors told me, was a very simple thing. I went to him and I told him, thank you for all the efforts that I had done. Dr. Ravi Nair was one of my very senior colleagues and mentor, and I was talking to him one day and we were having a very candid chat, and I told him, I said, sir, thank you for all the support that you have given me, and it's been a great journey today. And that was a day of a significant moment that I had achieved something, and I was sharing with him, and I said especially a thank you to him. He told me something very beautiful. He said, Vishal, I want to share one thing with you. The greatest contribution I have played in your life. I said, yes sir, please tell me. He said, I did not come in your way. And I thought this was such a profound thing. He just told me, he said, among all the things, and I think it was so genuine. He said, among all the great things that helped me in his contribution, he inspired me. He used to share a lot of ideas. He used to reprimand me on a lot of things. We used to challenge each other on a lot of questions. But one of the best things he told me was, he said, I did not come in your way. And I think that's the most relevant thing that is required today. That I do not know how many people support you. It is that mentor who does not come in your way, who does not challenge your idea and say, don't do it. A lot of the time, mentorship is about disagreeing with you fully and standing with you and saying, no, I think it's okay. Let's stand with him. And that's what sometimes these mentors who are par excellence do. They don't believe in your idea and they think it's a terrible idea. They think this is going to crash on the day 3. But they say, it's okay, we'll just mentor him. I think that's a rare quality of a mentor that I would like to mention.
So, if you want to give a message to all of us who are innovators, budding entrepreneurs, scientists, healthcare professionals who are venturing into science, who are venturing into innovations, who are venturing into tech, what would be that one message you want to give all of us?
I have it embossed on my wall somewhere that the only difference between intelligence and stupidity is that intelligence has limitations. So we need to know our limits. We need to know where science can go to. And I think beyond that, people who are stupid have more power and more questions to them, and the intelligence has limitations to it.
Very well said, very well said. So before we pass on the mic to the audience for some questions, we have a rapid fire round, a quick 10 questions. If you can answer without a break.
Will that be difficult?
Very difficult though.
Yeah.
Much difficult than the 10 what we had right now. Very difficult ones. Quickly jumping into the rapid fire ones. 10 questions. I'll go one after the other. Preferably a one-word answer or a one-line answer. Early riser or a night owl?
Night owl.
One word to describe your leadership style.
Impossible.
Top productivity hack you swear by?
Collaborate.
Wonderful. Favorite quote that inspires you?
When you think something is impossible, don't disturb the person who's trying to achieve it.
Nice. Most used app on your phone?
Calendar.
Best piece of advice you ever received?
The greatest wise a man can have is advice.
Nice one. Best way you unwind if you get time to?
Bike.
Oh, yeah, you are a biker. Yeah. Your go-to snack during a long work session?
OMAD. 1 meal a day. I don't eat.
preferred music genre? We all know you hear songs even when you're operating.
Yes, soft lock.
Nice. If you could time travel, would you go to the past or the future?
I would be at the moment.
Wonderful, wonderful. Give it up to Dr. Vishal Rao. Thank you very much. Perfect. We have had a wonderful session, so I would open it up to the audience if you have any questions.
So Vishal, today is World Rare Diseases Day. And actually, I just got off the phone with Dr. Vinod Paul. We were talking about the challenges and for India to sort of what kind of master plan we need. So you have worked closely with rare diseases. So maybe some thoughts. So,
Yeah, I think the most relevant one, Vijay, I think we've spoken so much about this aspect of rare disease. You have been one crusader in the aspect of rare diseases. And when I look at this area, I think there are two aspects which I think are missing. One is the aspect of ecosystem for rare diseases. And the ecosystem, when I say the policy, the aspect of connecting the ecosystem of from a policymaker to a person who's an inventor to a person who's a sufferer, and the gamut of prioritization of rare diseases that we can offer and solve to the world. And while we are waiting for the rest of the world to solve it, I think we need to take up the aspect of India's core issues of rare diseases, prioritize top three of them, create the ecosystem, which is what is badly needed today. We lack that ecosystem. We have ecosystem for all of this, but the ecosystem for rare diseases doesn't exist.
Hi sir, you said a lot of things about innovation and everything. So my question is how should regulators embrace innovation in India?
Regulation, it's an oxymoron, basically. So regulatory, by the time so it's very important for some innovator to understand that you need to understand the regulator, not the regulator understand you.
Yeah.
It's the reverse. Okay, because by the time I've seen a lot of inventions gone till regulatory, the regulatory is not compliant at all. So that means you have to go back. So remember, regulation will not change for you and make you understand with compassion. Regulation is a law. There is no compassion there. So unfortunately, if you say that I will take the arduous path of changing the regulation, then you are into a separate level of activism. So remember, regulatory is regulatory. That doesn't change with emotions. So when a subject expert committee of a DCJ sits, they sit and they give you some answers to which are regulatory. They have nothing to do with the bias. It's very, very important. That's why for an innovator, before he starts his innovation journey of the product, device, service, to understand what are the hurdles in the regulatory framework that I anticipate before you file your IP. It is very crucial. And once you do that, that pathway is carved much better. Like in my voice box, if I put a metal in and I say I'll be able to fit it in, I'll fail in the regulatory. But by the time it will be a new invention with a patent granted, I'll be sitting alone with it.
Thank you, sir.
Hello. As a robotic surgeon, what do you feel are the challenges in using robots for surgery, and what are the open challenges that we can improve upon in the future for robotic surgeons?
So when I embraced robotics, about more than 8-9 years back, I was actually against robots. Okay, I was totally against it because I thought that machines are here to replace humans. I had this mindset. I was here only in Indian Institute of Science. In fact, I think one floor above, when we discussed it many years back at the Robert Bosch Institute, where I years later said that I changed my stance. And I said, by the time learned robotics, and I said that there was this group of, it was a panel discussion where Stanford experts and many others were sitting, and one of the foreign faculties from the universities told us it's just around the corner that we will be replacing all doctors, and very fervently, very strongly told us. I was the only fellow who supported him, and it was very paradoxical. I said, I strongly support you in this, and there was a lot of debate in the audience on this. I said, it's a unnecessary worry, because at the end of it, I may not do MCH in oncology, but I may be doing MTech in oncology. I'll still be there. The point is, this is how change is going to happen. So don't get worried about this. I said it's a part of a change. And in the same change, robotics is going to come. Today, I feel that there has never been a better time in history for us to accelerate, accentuate and augment human healing using these machines. I myself use them day in and day out, and the precision with which they work, they are assisting me. They are not here to replace me. Now, if I can encourage this ecosystem rather than tell them, look, you are an MBBS student, how can you learn this? You have to come 20 years later, you have to become professor to learn it. And I think that ecosystem has to change. And that's where the industry has to evolve towards an understanding that medical people have to be encouraged. The entire ecosystem has to be learned so that the learning curve is shortened. Adoption of technology should be encouraged.
Hello, sir. So, in the journey of an entrepreneur, losses and failures are inevitable. Did you have any estimate or any way of estimating the affordable loss with your experience at each point of your journey? Was there any way that you estimated your affordable loss?
So if you're doing anything novel, you can't estimate it. As a general rule, I'm telling you, if you're doing something disruptive, absolutely you're going into a black hole. So otherwise, yes, you should ideally have people who are mentors who can give you, who have done those mistakes so that you don't repeat them. Like if you come to me with something I can share, I was telling Bhaskar just now about some of the failures I've done and I think we should not repeat them.
Yes.
So those are the kind of things which are generic, which we all can advise and help as mentors to say these are the broad range of failures where we come across. And I have 5 headings under them. Funding, IP, regulatory, market access, market intelligence. These are 5 areas where we fail to plan correctly. If these 5 areas you plan correctly, you are in the right path.
Yes. One question. Probably after this, we'll take one more question.
I guess I have 4 to 6. I don't know. I'll take the most.
The difficult ones you give it to Bhaskar.
Yeah, sure. I am open to both of it. So I wanted to understand, interesting question. I wanted to understand both, in your journeys, what were the, worst battery down moments and how did you recover from that? And my second question would be, I want to understand at the moment with the experience and knowledge you have gained, what are the things or, that keep you awake at night or are the most burning critical things that you want to work and solve by collaboration or by other forms?
So to answer the first question, I think the COVID was the best example of it. Shut us all down. Teams got disrupted, no money, funding stopped, investor who gave a check took it back. So we thought all is over. And that was the time we actually sat down together. The team became leaner, much smaller, regulatory had shut down, everything had forgotten. We sat down to think, what can we do? The idea was, do not keep quiet at that moment, keep doing something relevant. So what we thought was, forget everything else, let's think about what can we do with whatever is at hand. And that's the most important thing for me as a lesson, that it's always not to look at the future, it's to look at what is it that we can do at hand immediately, rather than look at the future. So future is uncertain now. In COVID, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, nothing we know. Can we do with what is at hand? So what we said was, what is at hand is patients. What is at hand is there are hundreds, thousands of patients across the country, across the world. What do they need right now? They need help. Okay, what kind of help? They need information, because these people don't have a nose, they breathe through the throat. They are also inhaling the virus, so what can we do for them? So we just went back very quickly, disrupted, and came up with a very innovative product, because I went back to my innovation team and I said, they need to breathe, it has to be antiviral, antibacterial, they have to have a bath also. So can we create a bib which is innovative, which doesn't get wet, which can be breathable, and yet which can be antiviral and this. So we came up with a tie-back material and we created multiple bibs which is sent across the country. Keep yourself busy. When it shuts down to that point, and you believe in your idea is still there may be a sunrise around the corner. So keep doing that. That's my first advice on this, and that's from ground zero to continuing to where it was. Keeping it awake, I think something keeps you awake all night. For some reason, if you have a relevant idea that you believe in, it will keep you awake. But it's also, I always say it's, they say the idea is to dream big, but also wake up and act on it, So both are important. See, big dreams all of us have, but waking up and acting is also important. So what keeps you awake is important, that your action is consummate to what you're trying to achieve in this. And that's how I'll stop it.
And one last thing I wanted to understand. So fortunately or unfortunately, COVID was, something like pandemic for us, not just innovators, but for the entire world was an alarm, right? So I wanted to understand, why is it that, when the dark cloud of death strikes, only then the policymakers, the regulators and everyone in the system, changes and tries to collaborate and work fast? And how can we change, or as innovators, what can we do so that even in other scenarios, in day-to-day scenarios or in normal scenarios, we can collaborate and work together at a much faster rate and innovate at scale.
This is a common trend across all organizations, institutions, policies, governments, universe, human behavior. That when you're pushed to the limit, you change. Until then, you like status quo. It's a human nature. So it's not something abnormal or weird that happened that you say that, oh, because of COVID they did it. When anything alarming, if there is a bomb, that's when the entire system starts changing towards this. Oftentimes we say that people forget the person who diffused the bomb. It's only the one who took off who will take the credit. The person who diffused the bomb, no world doesn't remember them. And we are like those scientists. Many of them who diffused those bombs. So world will forget them somewhere or the other. The idea is to keep reminding them. And the world has to change, and I think that's where the opening for the next era should be on conscious capitalism, not vulture capitalism. Vulture capitalism is when you keep the problem alive and work on a solution. You're trying to solve the problem like what Bhaskar said, and I think conscious capitalism is going to be valuation together. The conscious capitalism is going to be about bringing ambition and purpose together. So if you should have ambition, you should have a purpose to that ambition also. And I think that would make the world more equitable, more purposeful.
Perfect. I think, sir, thank you for taking time out. I know you need to catch a flight. Sorry for forcing you to be here, but we totally enjoyed.
Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed the whole session.
Thank you.
Obviously, a lot inspiring and
thank you.
Very
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Hope to host you 10 more times.
We'll take it today.
We have a small goodie bag. I request Dr. Vijay Chandra to hand it over to